Hello and welcome to the Before and After podcast, the podcast for the short-term accountant and those who want to know what they can do with their accounting degree. I am your co-host, Keegan.
And I am your co-host and producer, Darlene Nationale.
We are two former public accountants with a wide range of experience in tax, audit, advisory, big firms, small firms, medium firms. We'll be bringing in some people that we've met through our career journeys to tell you their stories as well.
And how they were able to navigate both in or out of public accounting. We're here to knock down those professional barriers so we can unveil the different career journeys through firms like Big Four and the possibilities after.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Before and After podcast. I am your host this week, Keegan, CPA, and with me, as always, my co-host, Darlene.
It's
How
me.
You doing, Dar?
I'm good. I'm excited for this one, as I usually am, but I think the person that we have on today is from Canada, and I love it when we have people outside of the US who want to come on to the show because it brings yet again another perspective.
So without further ado, let me introduce the audience to our guest for this week, Graeme Chong out of Canada. Graeme, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great. Always love to record a podcast. So Graeme, you've worked at a Big Four accounting firm. You're now not there. You're doing all kinds of fun stuff. So I'm looking forward to diving in to the nitty gritty of your career journey. So wherever you want to start with, maybe start from the beginning. That's usually a good place. Like what got you into accounting? How'd you end up? Did you major in accounting in school? How did you end up at your firm? Just somewhere around there we can get started with.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I don't know how familiar your audience is with, Canada's whole geographic location and everything, but I'm on the West Coast. So I was born and raised in Victoria, which is like a smaller city in BC. And as far as like majors or as far as jobs out of my university, accounting was like a big feeder, or I guess a big kind of profession that a lot of students kind of went to. So a lot of firms always came to the school. So that's, I guess, how I was first introduced into accounting. And it's actually funny because my school in particular, you don't do any business related classes till third and fourth year. So the first 2 years I was kind of doing just general, just like economics, psychology, and all like these random kind of things. And then it wasn't until third year where I kind of got actually introduced into accounting. And with the Big Four, they have to recruit so early. I think they recruit like every fall for like 1 year out kind of thing. I kind of already had kind of an understanding of accounting just because my aunt was also an accountant as well. So that, I guess, kind of like pushed me in that direction as well. But yeah, just a combination of that, just kind of being my very first exposure to like a real, I guess, like business course, and then also just the family kind of aspect of that. And I got an internship at a Big Four, and then they just pretty much locked me up full time when I started after like graduation. I think that's how a lot of like the Big Fours kind of do it. And I was on exchange in the fourth year, so I didn't really want to kind of branch out and kind of try and look around for other jobs. So I kind of felt like good job security there. And I actually enjoyed my internship, so I was happy to come back. So I guess it just all worked out.
Yeah. And I actually had a question about, did you go into tax? Did you go into audit, or was either one of them of greater interest to you than the other?
So I was actually in audit, and it was funny because when I actually networked with these professionals, because I mentioned that I guess in the third year we had no business knowledge kind of really whatsoever. So I honestly had really very little of like what I was kind of getting myself into. And it seems like with the Big Four, a majority of the intake is in audit. So I guess when I networked with a lot of people, it was the audit people. So I was just surrounded by audit. And so I think that's kind of what pushed me into audit as well. So yeah,
and I mean, part of it is usually they're sending audit people to recruitment events because auditors are just so much more outgoing, right?
I'm not going to fight you on that one since I was in tax, but yeah, I actually had a friend that I met with the other day, and she's in audit, and she doesn't like the job. Okay. But they were telling her that she needed to start doing some recruiting because I don't know, she wasn't putting enough hours or whatever. So it was interesting that people who don't even like the job, they're still forcing them to go to recruiting things. But hey, whatever works for you, auditors.
So, Graham, did you enjoy your time in audit?
Actually, first, before I answer that, it's funny that you mentioned the recruiting events because actually wanted to go to some of the recruiting events because like we would do fun things like going to like golf simulators and like all this stuff, but like COVID hit, so then like it obviously stopped. So I kind of just like missed out on it. But like there were some fun recruiting events that my firm did have, and unfortunately I wasn't really able to utilize that. But back to your question, did I enjoy audit? So I don't know, it had an ups and downs, I guess like most professions. But I guess like as far as like my firm, I really enjoyed like the company culture there. And obviously I think it really depends on I guess the office location and people you're working with. Because obviously I hear like bad experiences from other people. So obviously I don't want to paint this as like a rosy picture kind of thing. I think it's really office dependent, team dependent kind of thing. But as far as like my office culture, I really enjoyed it. But for me, audit just wasn't really like what I wanted to do. Just because like I found a job, well, the job in itself is more like kind of like a regulatory need, where you're not really offering too much value to the client, I guess. Unlike, like tax, for instance, like you're helping them save money. And also to like, I really wanted to go into like corporate finance and other things within my firm as well. So like there's more like value add because I really like the client interaction. I really like helping the clients. And just with audit, I just didn't feel like, I guess, important or like, I don't really know the best way to describe it, but I just didn't really feel like I was kind of like doing the most that I could to, I guess, progress, I guess. But audit did like produce some good like skills, like soft skills, like communication, and like a bunch of Excel related skills, which is very important, I guess, in a lot of jobs nowadays. And so I learned definitely a lot in audit, but as far as like staying in there long term, that's probably not where I want to be.
So did you realize that early on that this isn't what you wanted to do long term, or did it kind of come over time? Like, did you jump straight into the job and say, I'm only going to be here for however many years, or how did that go for you?
Um, I would say that I think obviously when you first kind of start, there's like that period where you kind of just like that rosy period, I guess, where you're just like, I don't know about, but you're just kind of like really thrilled about being in audit. And then I guess the novelty kind of like dies down as you hit busy season. Um, but yeah, I'd say it's like halfway kind of through. And that's just in a combination of me just kind of networking amongst the firm and talking to other people who are in other service lines and talking about what they did and all that stuff. And I just found like what they were doing to be like way more interesting. And I ended up doing like short-term rotations in other kind of groups. I did corporate finance. So really just after that was just like, I really want to kind of be here or do something similar to that. And that's like when audit kind of just wasn't really for me.
Yeah, so it sounds like you enjoyed like the culture, you enjoyed the people, but it really just came down to the work itself. You didn't enjoy. So what was probably like the first step that either you started looking for another job or were you on LinkedIn trying to find different people to connect to in order for you to like transfer outside of auditing?
So I guess with that, so first off, because of COVID, I was laid off at my old firm. And I guess it's almost like a blessing in disguise because like before I probably wouldn't have left audit because generally most people will stick it out the full like 2 years or so, get your CPA designation at the firm, and then you can kind of go out to industry that way. But obviously since I was laid off because of COVID, it was kind of just like a push for me to branch out, I guess, because I guess like working at a big four is kind of like a safety net in a sense, which, it's good. But I guess that's why a lot of people stay the 2 years. And obviously that's why you see the jump afterwards. so, but when I left, there's a period of time when I was looking for new jobs, and the I ended up working at I ended up switching to a smaller accounting firm. And actually, the partner at the new accounting firm was a senior manager at my old firm. So I kind of had a personal connection that way. And the reason why I guess I chose a smaller firm was because I'd be doing obviously a bit of audit, but there's kind of more a wide variety of kind of services that I could offer, especially with a smaller firm. They kind of get you to do a lot more things. So I got to learn how to do like some tax work. And also I got introduced to the corporate finance group there. And if they have deals and stuff, I'll be able to kind of help along with that. And then obviously, yeah, there's like the audit and reviews. So it's just kind of like developing a more broad set of skills. And obviously because the partner at the new firm was from my old firm, he also hired a bunch of other people from my old firm as well. So it was kind of like a similar culture in a sense, like I have a lot of familiar faces, but just doing like a different job, I guess, which is kind of like what I wanted to do, like get out of audit, but still keep the same people. So I guess it kind of worked out.
Yeah. So you're basically expanding a little bit more of your experience from audit to what it sounds like you were doing, like tax and everything else. And it sounds like you enjoy it a lot more. What would you say was probably one of the biggest differences between a big four firm and a smaller firm? Because we do get questions of people who are graduating college and they're like, I don't know if I should go into big four because people are always saying, their mental health is just going down so fast. And, they don't really know what some of the perks are for the smaller firms because either they're not represented well in the recruiting season or, there's just a lot of different reasons why. So what would you say to those people who are asking, like, what's the difference between big four and the smaller firms?
This might sound contradictory to what I said in the past, but my honest recommendation is I think you should start off at a big four. Just because, like, for me, I had such a great experience, but obviously, I guess like that'll vary. But because, for instance, when you're going through the CPA program, it's nice to have a lot of peer support. And so there's so many, like, so when I started, there were like 50 kind of intakes, new students or whatever. And we're kind of all going through the whole CPA program, which is a bunch of modules and exams and whatnot, right? And so at a smaller firm, there's only maybe like 3 or 4 kind of people starting with you. And also, besides the peer support, there's just way more resources just to help make sure you succeed through the CPA program. Like for instance, the CFE, which is the final exam to get your CPA designation. Usually at a big four, like not very many people fail. But what I've found is when I've went to my newer firm and what I've seen at smaller firms and stuff, like the support's not there. And so there are some people who do end up failing. So I guess one of my big recommendation is obviously if you want to get your CPA designation, the big four offers a lot of support. But then also too, it's just kind of like I just have a lot of lifelong friends, I guess, just from obviously being surrounded by like 50 new kind of intakes. And I think that's important, like working with a bunch of like young people, like young, ambitious people, just like surrounded by that. And like, don't get me wrong, like you do work hard. Like, I don't want to like paint it like this is all like great and all that stuff. But yeah, like I just feel like the support's there. You make a lot of new friends, and like the firm's like social events are like super fun too, because like obviously a big firm can kind of have like more outlandish kind of stuff than like a smaller one. So that's the plus of like a big four, and obviously the prestige of having that on your resume, which will help you get other jobs down the line. Just because, for instance, if you're trying to go to industry, a lot of the job postings will say like big four experience. So just starting at a big four, I think just offers or just starts you off on the right foot. And then afterwards, you can kind of go to a smaller firm if you want to, and you still like accounting, but you just necessarily don't want to work the same hours because the small firm actually has a lot of pros itself too. One, you do get way more work-life balance. So I find like I'm not working as hard as I did back at a big four. And also too, I guess the flip side of like having a big intake win and being a smaller office is obviously you can develop more relationship with like managers and partners because obviously they're more readily available.
Right.
So that's like one good thing about working at a smaller shop. Just I guess it's more lateral in its structure, just because like they're more easily accessible. So that's like one good thing too about working in a smaller shop. And also, as I mentioned, you get a wider range of experience, and they're more eager to, I guess, like really just guide you, or really just listen to kind of like what you want to do. Like for instance, when I started, I told them I wanted to go do some corporate finance work. So like the partner like introduced me to the corporate finance team like right away. So they're like really like hands-on, and you get to like get a lot of experience kind of right from the get-go. So I guess to sum it up, like Big Four, prestige, good like peer network, and like support for CPA and stuff like that. But smaller firm, you get like a wider range of experience. You get more like connections with like managers, partners, and then you're just readily supported in that way.
Yeah, I think that pretty much answered our other question, which is when you were looking for different jobs, was Big Four like because nowadays there's so many different topics about if Big Four is even still prestigious. There's people who say yes, there's people who say no. But since you have actually recently been going through it, it looks like a lot of the recruiters out there put that Big Four experience. Was it necessary, or was it like highly recommended that you have it?
It's hard to say, just because obviously, well, in Canada at least, I can't speak for the States, but I do see a lot of job like descriptions or whatever it says it's nice to have Big Four experience. And even if it doesn't say that, usually a lot of people at the Big Four kind of go to their clients who are like big public companies and stuff. So you have way more kind of access to those kind of jobs because you're already kind of working there. You have the connections with the team. So I've seen like a lot of people jump to their clients. So yeah, I definitely think that's why like Big Four is good to kind of set you up, I guess, for the next job, I guess, if that's what you're looking at.
Do you think that there's any, because I do love that answer. There's people who are like, don't even go into Big Four at all. It's not worth it. And then there's others who are like, I can see the benefit of it. It sounds like overall you had a really great blend of teams, of probably counselors that were surrounding you during your time there. Because I found at least that the people who enjoy it the least, right, who are just ready to just leave whenever, don't have a great combination of either a guidance, which is your counselor, of teams who are understanding of like whatever work-life balance you have going for you, and just like the work itself. But it sounds like you had a great balance of the three when you were there. It's just that the work itself just was not interesting to you.
Yeah, pretty much that's it. Like I had a good time at my firm, and yeah,
I love that. That's cool.
Like I was just gonna like stick it out obviously to my CPA, and I guess my firm has the policy of you can't really switch into corporate finance until you get your CPA. So I would have just like wrote out like audit for like 2 years, which is what a lot of people do, and then they just jump to either corporate finance, like transactions and like other areas in the firm. And so like, yeah, as far as like, yeah, you pretty much touched on it, like a great experience there. Just like the job function just really wasn't for me. But
yeah, and especially since it's during COVID, I think like you were saying earlier, the recruiting events, you going to, I don't know if you have Top Golf over there, or any of the maybe like happy hour events, those are no longer there. So you're really just met with the work itself, barely the people, because it's all online. I can only imagine the virtual recruiting that goes on behind it. So what I'm interested in is, so I know that you're pursuing your CPA, and what is the difference? Like, what is the process there in Canada in order to get it?
The CPA program here is kind of a blend of course modules and then work experience. So you obviously do these like simultaneously. The work experience requirement is 30 months of work experience, and every 6 months you have to write a job experience report touching on how you kind of reach some of these enabling competencies, such as like communication, like ethics, teamwork. I should know all these because I just wrote my report, but I forget. But yeah, and then a bunch of technical skills like financial reporting, audit, and all that stuff. So that's the work requirement part of it. And then there's a 2-year program with the modules, which is 6 modules. So 2 of them are just like basic core accounting modules, and then there's 2 elective modules. But if you are in a public practice, like a Big Four, like a local other accounting firm, you have to do assurance and tax. But there's other options like finance and performance management as well if you aren't in a public accounting firm. And then the last 2 modules are like group projects, and then one of them is helping you prepare for the final exam, which is the CFE. And then so once you do all of that, you'll get designated. So usually it'll take 30 months because that's the longer of the 2. And then yeah, you're a CPA.
Wow. I like it. And you're almost done. I think you said September, October, you're hoping to get it.
Yeah, so the CFE is in May and September. So I'm scheduled to write in September. So I'm currently going through Capstone 1, which is the group project module. And then I'll have one last module in the summer, and then I'll be studying for my exam. And then since I had a previous internship, I already had some more work experience. So my 30 months is like actually almost up. I think I have 28 months to date right now. So pretty much, yeah, once I finish my exam, hoping that I pass, then yeah, I'll be designated.
How much does your like previous classes that you took in college and university, and how much does your work experience with some of these topics, how much does that help you in studying for this exam and completing those modules?
As far as school, the school like accounting courses that I did definitely helped during like the core 1 and 2 modules. So the very first 2 modules, which was touched on like a lot of like the IFRS kind of accounting issues and all that stuff. But as far as then when you kind of move on to core 2, I think, and then also the assurance module, just really working in audit helped me a lot, because you have to kind of do a lot of work on like developing procedures, like audit procedures and stuff like that. And if you aren't really doing that in work, it's kind of like hard to kind of make up those procedures, like if you really don't have any on the job experience. So I think for that, definitely working helped that out. But I mean, as far as that, pretty much just like reading the course material in that particular module is like good enough, I think.
Okay, so you mentioned that you study for IFRS issues. Does Canada use IFRS exclusively? Because down here we use US GAAP. Obviously, it's in the name. But do you see a mix of both, or is it exclusively IFRS for you guys?
So for public companies, we mainly use IFRS. There is the occasion where there is a US GAAP situation, and so we also do US GAAP. But then for private companies, we use ASPE. So those are the 3 main ones that we'll see here.
Okay, that's super interesting, actually. Like, because usually down here, if you run into an IFRS client, that's like a huge pain in the butt. And you're like, oh my God, I have to change everything I know. I have to go find the IFRS partner that knows all this stuff. Like, this audit just became a nightmare. So if it's the same for you guys, like I totally understand. It's the same but opposite.
Yeah, exactly. I only had one US GAAP planned, and then I mean, for most of it, it was pretty similar to IFRS. And then like, I guess obviously because it was in the first year file, you could kind of like roll forward prior year, and that's what you really do in audit.
At least that part's consistent, is refer to last year's work papers.
Yeah.
So what did your day-to-day look like before, and what does it look like now between the 2 firms? How's it really different?
Oh yeah, actually I should have brought this up, I guess, in the comparison between, but now I can talk about this now. What I found in working at a Big Four is when you're working on audits, the engagements are like 2 to 3 weeks at a time. So you're really only focused on one job and balancing one job during that period. And because the jobs are bigger, there's also like the planning and interim stages before even doing year-end field work. So you kind of get like 3 different sets of exposure to the client in the year. So that way you kind of just have a way better understanding of really what's going on. Whereas in a smaller firm, the engagements are smaller. So you can kind of do a small NTRs, which will be like 1 day. and then you're kind of like balancing a bunch of different clients at the same time. So it's a lot more kind of, for me, I guess, like checking my schedule and kind of just making a to-do list, so that I can kind of keep way more organized on like all the different clients I have to work on and who the manager and partner is, and make sure they're in the loop. Whereas like, as I mentioned in the Big Four, you only have really one point of contact during the 3 weeks, and maybe you might have to balance two on that kind of like changeover period, where you kind of roll onto a new engagement. But yeah, I guess day to day, at a smaller firm, you definitely have to kind of stay more organized.
I like that answer. I like that answer. It really encompasses some of the more important aspect of doing business is, good communication, staying organized, staying on top of it. And, if you master those sort of things, then you can succeed anywhere you go in business, whether it's accounting, whether it's, sales, marketing. Well, maybe not sales. Maybe you need a little bit more people skills, but
Definitely. I think I have one last question for you, Graeme, and that's for people who are currently going through their CPA, and whether they're at a big firm or a small firm. How are you able to ask for, if it does pertain to you, how are you able to ask your teams like to give you more time to study either during the busy seasons, or how are you able to communicate that? Because so many staff, I would say, are kind of scared to set a boundary between what they're doing in their personal life, whether that includes their CPA exam or whatever. And just basically communicating is an issue for a lot of new staff. So what advice do you have for people who are trying to maybe set a boundary between work and their goal of getting their CPA licensure?
So I guess the firm kind of already does a good job of helping you balance that, in the sense of, one, they won't let you do any module during busy season. And if you request to do a module during busy season, they pretty much just flat out tell you that they won't like really give you the same like support they would have if it was like on an off season. Whereas I think you would normally get like a few study days before the exam and whatnot. But also too, I don't know, I guess, the requirements I have to go through in the States for the CPA, but as far as like the modules itself, they aren't really too intensive. I guess I don't know if I should be saying this, but like it's pretty like easy to kind of like do the whole module by just reading the material and kind of just not really doing too much else. So it doesn't really take too much time, I guess. And a lot of my friends as well, like we kind of just submit our like projects on like the last day. We kind of just like push everything out. Like, and then as far as like the exam, like we pretty much just like study like 1 week before, and the firms like give us 1 day paid. And then they're very supportive if you want to book vacation time for the exam to like study for that. So I haven't personally found any issues, but maybe that's just like my firm just being good. But
so I'm not gonna lie, it sounds like Canada is living up to its name as being the nicest country in the world, because it's like, well, from the stories that I hear, at least from our like US audience and US guests that come on, it's like, oh my god, it's hell over here. It's like I'm going through so much, and you're like, yeah, we're pretty much cruising through the
I've got a question though for you, Graeme. Were you a 4.0 student in college?
no, I wasn't.
Okay. Then maybe I'll give you a little bit more credence with your description.
I think it's Canada.
Yeah,
I
it
really
sounds like it's Canada.
Right? It's like,
Yeah.
we're dying over here, and Graham's like, we're we like to do things for fun, and we have good work-life balance. And Keegan and I are here like, what the hell? How is this a reality somewhere in public accounting? But I mean, I'm so glad that you were able to enjoy your experience, and it sounds like you would actually recommend people to continue going the Big Four path. Am I correct?
Yeah, and I guess maybe that's just because I had a good experience.
Yeah, love it.
But also too, like I know some people at my firm who had those like bad portfolios and they were working till like 11, 12 at night. So I mean, like I think I was just very lucky, and a lot of people in my team were also lucky as well. But don't get me wrong, like you still have some people still like work hard and or like work longer hours just based on like the particular client that they're on.
Yeah, no, this is true. I actually really love your perspective because so often we get people who are just like, just, they've been
We
tired of it
get people
all.
with bones to pick that like to come on and air some dirty laundry
Which is
sometimes.
great, like I think
Love it.
and then but it's true because we have some people who are like, oh, is this just like a bashing podcast for Big Four and public accountants? And it's like, no, we're just bringing to light, different people's reality. And quite frankly, you, Graeme, and along with Tanner Cox was one of the he loves it. He's like a tax manager there or audit manager there. But it's true, like this is possible for people who want to go into Big Four. But I will say, based on the other stories that I've heard, it's not like it's a 100% guarantee that you're going to have a great team, that you're going to have the Graeme experience. That's what I'm going to say. But it's possible. I think it's great that you're sharing that.
Graeme, for you, what does your career look like? What does your career outlook look like for you? Because I know you said that you used to do audit. Now you're shifting more towards a corporate finance perspective. But so what's your 2-year plan, your 5-year plan, or whatever you have in store for yourself?
So I guess like my whole future is kind of up in the air. Right now I'm kind of considering a lot of different things, but I guess for certain, like I'm gonna finish my CPA because I'm so close to that. So in September, like I'll be designated. And then from there, I was kind of pondering a few different options. One was going back to a Big Four in corporate finance. The second opportunity was going to one of my like ex-clients that I used to work at a Big Four and kind of get like an industry job like in FP&A or something like that. And then my third, which I don't know if I necessarily want to do anymore, but switch into like investment banking. So I was actually studying for my GMAT last year. And I was actually balancing that and working at a Big Four. And obviously, because that's not CPA related, you don't get the same support for that. And so that exam didn't go so well. But, I think most people kind of take 2 or 3 tries for the GMAT. But yeah, my third option was go get an MBA, kind of move down to the States and pursue investment banking and stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of my 3 scenarios. I haven't really kind of decided, I guess, on where I want to go. I'm kind of leaning more towards the corporate finance in a Big Four, just because I kind of like that aspect of work. And also I did like the Big Four culture. And also I kind of would like to stay in Canada just because, yeah, my life's kind of pretty much settling down here. I'm purchasing a condo this summer and then also my family's here. So
Are you purchasing a condo in Vancouver?
yeah.
Oh my goodness gracious. That is an expensive condo. Let me just, for people that don't know, Vancouver real estate is very expensive.
Yeah, it's crazy. Because right now, actually, I live in Burnaby, which is like outside of Vancouver. I think it's like 25, like 30-minute kind of SkyTrain, like that's a public transit into downtown Vancouver. So it's like on the outskirts. And so my 2-bedroom condo in Burnaby cost the same price as like a 1-bed downtown. So
Whoa.
yeah, Vancouver definitely is not easy, but
you're doing it. So props to you.
Yeah. And honestly, when you do decide to, it sounds like you're going to lean towards the Big Four corporate finance. We'd love to have you back on and see kind of like what the difference is between audit and corporate finance in the Big Four environment. We'd love to have you back on.
yeah, I'd love to be back on. That'd be great.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, Graeme.
And where can people find you if they're looking to connect?
Yeah, I have an Instagram, which is Instagram. And then also have a YouTube channel as well. I did like post kind of just some like day in life accounting videos and stuff.
Awesome. Well, good luck to you, Graeme.
If you liked this podcast, make sure to share it with coworkers, families, and friends. Feel free to connect and message us on all our social media platforms at B4 and After Pod. That's the letter B, the number 4, and After Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Are you interested in sharing your story? Fill out our Google introduction form that's linked in our social media bios. If you haven't already, leave us a review on Apple Podcast so we can continue to provide you with unique stories from all around the world. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Before and After. Until the next one, bye.